So I'm going to use my usual introduction, which, hey, we're live. I haven't actually done this in a few weeks. I've been chickening out and doing the Zoom calls and then a podcast on YouTube. But you were such a great and dynamic person. I felt we had to do this live. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to let Dr. Jerrica, right, Todd, introduce herself, and then we'll get into which, for fun, Jerrica doesn't even really know session got ruined by tech issues. So I'm just going to throw questions at her. And as you jump in and ask questions, feel free to do so. Okay, go ahead.
So, I guess that follows the mantra, stay ready, because you never know when you're going to have to speak and not be able to be prepared. So thank you again for having me. I am Dr. Jerrica Todd, and I am the founder and CEO of Your Pharmacy Advocate and the executive editor of Pharmacists magazine. And I'm so pleased to be with you today. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of your platform.
So I was talking to Jerrica a couple of weeks ago because I conference and to be on the entrepreneurial track as well as any other ones. And it was such a great conversation. Really got into, which I guess is especially is something that you deal with a lot, is pharmacist burnout. And I know you've been specializing in women. Your magazine, Women Pharmacists, but you just launched one for men as well. So, and of course, this change that affects everybody. And it's interesting because I've been talking to a lot of people over the last couple of years, shortages. And I have been talking to a couple of hospital pharmacists. That's where I am. And two people, they are so burnt out. And then I've also recently, we just released, as I did on Zoom, on how technology is going to affect the future of pharmacy. And a big part of that is because of the labor shortage. If you could talk a little bit about what you're seeing and how people can address being burnt out, whether that's something they can do at their place of reinvent themselves in a new business, or what is it you're seeing and what are you talking to people about?
So all of the above.
Is that okay?
Yes, definitely. We in the profession of pharmacy are seeing things that look a whole lot different than they did when I graduated so many years ago. And I'm sure most of my colleagues would agree with that as well. And I think that not only are we seeing the pressures of just what's happening in the world, we've been in the midst of a pandemic for the last couple of years. So there are things that are, I count them as pressures of just in the world. Then there are the challenges and the pressures of healthcare in general, as it is administered here in our country. And then there are the pressures of the profession and the world of pharmacy that many people, I think, are not as aware of, but they're becoming more aware of them as they hit mainstream news and mainstream media. And so it has left many of my pharmacy colleagues either, one, not being able to find a job. I talked about a report that I read that said between 2020 and 2030, there was going to be a decrease in the number of pharmacist jobs. And I don't think that that's cause for alarm. I think it's cause for opportunity. And so while we have the pressures of the world, the pressures of healthcare, the pressures of the world of pharmacy, all making an impact on pharmacist careers and pharmacy technician careers, I think that it gives an opportunity for us to reinvent ourselves, if you will, to step back and acknowledge, hey, I'm burnt out. I need a break. I need to go and do something different. And I think that it gives rise to many opportunities, whether it's another job, whether it's a job on your terms, whether it's the entrepreneurial route. There are many things that a person could pursue to decide what's next.
Question, and forgive me if this isn't your expertise, but why are they, given that we're hearing burnout and a labor shortage, Why is it that we're looking at a decrease in, and I guess the second part of that question, if you know, is if we're looking at a decrease in pharmacists, are they going to try to be pharmacist technicians? Like, are they making up for that, making up for the burnout and the all these pharmacies have if we're decreasing pharmacists?
Well, that's not necessarily my area
That's,
of
I know. I
expertise,
was just
but
wondering if you had any thoughts on it.
my thoughts on it are that though there are not a decreased number of pharmacists being graduating and being produced, if you will, from the number of pharmacy schools, I think that what happens is profits are become very important, and therefore there comes the compromise of, do we make shareholders happy, or do we have adequate staffing, or whatever? And that's a very simplified version. Then there's also, the middle of that whole equation, being pharmacy benefit management and how all of that is carried out, that definitely has an impact on healthcare, has an impact on pharmacy, has an impact on even how pharmacy is delivered, if you will, to patients, to consumers. And so all of that are part of, if you will, the pressures that I talked about of healthcare, the pressures of the profession. And I think it's forcing us to change and learn to do things differently, learn to creatively look at ways to, one, find satisfaction in what it is that we do in our careers, as well as be able to still serve patients, still serve consumers who desperately need. I think I have on a shirt. My shirt today says everyone needs a pharmacist, and I really do believe that everyone does need a pharmacist. And so I think that these challenges are ripe ground for those who are called to address those challenges head on, be it with movements, with advocacy, with government involvement. And then I think there's also a place for the pharmacist and pharmacy professional, if you will, because I include technicians in that, to also say, I'm going to do it a different way. I'm going to find another way to have an impact and leave a mark on my profession.
So, what are some of the opportunities that people are asking you about or that you're talking about? You get somebody, again, I go back to my colleague in a hospital who's just, like I said, overwhelmed. And like, and as you know, you see it everywhere. So, what is the first things that you tell them in order to kind of get their life back?
So one of the things that I think is really important to do, and it's probably not done very often, is I ask the question, what do you want? And I ask it just like I just enunciated it, because many times it's really easy to get caught up in what's not working, what's not fair, what's not right, what's not equitable, on and on and on. However, I believe that the place to start is answering the question, what do you want? And usually when people can pause long enough to start answering that question and identifying what it is you want and start thinking about what's possible, I encourage people to, whether they, want to have a role, if you will, in traditional pharmacy as we know it, or if they want to create something totally different, I encourage them to look at where they find the gap and fill that gap. Whether you have the whole blueprint on how to do it or not, fill the gap and create what you want to see. So there's the saying, be the change that you want to see in the world. I say create what it is that you want to see, fill the gaps that you see in healthcare or that you see in the delivery of healthcare, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And what would be the steps to do that? So let's start with that.
So first, you have to decide what it is you want, and then you would be surprised. And that seems really simplistic, but
do you have some examples of, we love stories of maybe clients or people that that were in a situation and had to kind of figure out what they wanted and then where'd they go?
So, for example, and this because I just posted about this pharmacist earlier this morning with regard to the magazine, it might seem strange to hear that a pharmacist is a fashion stylist. And I had a former coaching client, who came to me. She was working retail, definitely was pharmacy manager in retail, also had her own consulting business, consulting patients, which is something very often that pharmacists will do, is they'll turn and they'll start consulting, which seems like a natural progression. But when I asked her, what do you want? Like, really, what do you want? And she said, I want to be a fashion stylist, an image consultant. And I said, go do that.
Yeah.
And so she has obviously styled clients that are not even in pharmacy, but we're talking about pharmacy. If you can imagine the number of pharmacy professionals that she has served in her way of how she wants to serve, and brought joy to herself, brought joy to a lot of other people. And it might not seem conventional, not seem the norm or the standard, but that's what I mean when I say, what do you want? Sometimes for whatever reason, we made the decision to pursue the profession we're pursuing. It may not have been what we wanted. It might have been chosen because that's what our parents thought, or that's what we got our scholarship in, or who knows, whatever. Not a conversation about advocating that people leave pharmacy, not at all. However, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to want something different. It's okay to want to have been in a place for a certain amount of time and say, okay, that doesn't serve me anymore. I'd like to go and take care of patients over here. I've had numerous clients who come my way by way of coaching, who have decided they wanted to take care of a specific population of people. We have, diabetes is at epidemic proportions in our country, especially for patients of color. And so I've had several come through my coaching and decide that's how they wanted to serve. So I think it's just as individual as the person, what you want to do. It may look like what someone would expect, or it may not, but I'm very, very keen on making a decision about what it is you want to leave, because, we only have a certain number of summers on this earth. And I know we're in the midst of summer, but I think that when looking at how many summers do I have, and none of us really know, but we don't have any summers to waste. We don't have any time to waste. And so I believe that whatever dream we have in our heart, what I say, don't let your brain edit what your heart screams. And how many people spend an entire career doing what their brain said to do when their heart was screaming all along something different.
Great. And it's interesting that you brought up, going into specific areas like you mentioned the diabetes, because one of the other things that we've been talking about are exploring micro niche markets. And to me, that is for pharmacists who want to go, for pharmacies and pharmacists who want to go into or just expand their business. And maybe it's funny because you think expanding your business is opening up, but maybe the opportunities are to not open up, but lurk at a smaller vertical and really go through that, explore that vertical. I don't know what you think. I just thought of that. But anyway, we only have a few more minutes left because I do try to keep these to 15 to 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. So somebody's thinking about finishing, wrapping, let's say making a change. What are your top 3 bits of advice for them, other than, figure out what you want? What would be the next step?
Well, and it's not figure out what you want, because you don't have to figure it out. You
understand.
Yes. Acknowledge.
That's good. I like that.
We will quiet a voice of what it is that we'd like to do. You ask people the question, if time and money were no issue, what would you be doing? And then you find out the what do you want. And then I would say that the second thing is to find community. Pharmacists are very used, and I say pharmacists because I am one, but let's replace that with pharmacy professionals. Pharmacy professionals are very used to being siloed. I think we're also very used to being an ancillary part of a healthcare team. And so we work well individually. However, especially in the times that we're in, one in healthcare, one in just the way the world is going, I believe that community is very important. And so after you decide what it is that you want, or you acknowledge what it is that you want, I think the next thing to do is find a community, because you garner motivation and energy from being around. Also, even if they're not doing the exact same thing, they're going in the same direction. So I would say find a community, because it's very easy for your inspiration to wax and wane when you really get to it. And then the third thing that I would say, and this is something that I think is for those in the pharmacy profession, is pay for information. Pay for information. Don't get the book, go home and sit down and go, I'm going to figure this out. I give the example that unless organic chemistry was your favorite, most of us didn't go buy the organic chemistry book, go home and sit down and go, I'm going to figure this out. We said, I'll pay this school tuition to teach me everything I need to know about organic chemistry and everything else I need to know to become the professional that I'm setting out to be. And so I think that you need to hire and pay someone to teach you what it is to know, because I go back to my statement, we don't have forever and we don't know how many summers we have. So I encourage people to decide what you want, find a community, and then ultimately pay to learn what it is you need to learn to get going on what it is you want.
Excellent. I love that. So it's basically, once you made the decision, you figured out where you're going. Don't mess around. Just do it.
Yeah.
And don't properly learning what you need to know.
Don't waste time trying to figure it out. Hire somebody who can show you how to do that.
So would this be inappropriate to throw in the conference pitch then? Pay to come to the conference and get your community.
That's part of that community. And the other of learning what it is that you need to know to move forward.
Yeah. Absolutely. Excellent. So yeah, and I would have loved, maybe we set up another time, but kind of talk about some of those opportunities. Because one of the questions I have, and like I said, I want to, and we can roll this over and address it the other time. Sure. And I'm wondering if you can, but is if somebody, since burnout is such a big thing, let's say somebody loves their job, or they loved what their job was, or what their job should be. Do you have ways for them to restructure, how their current work situation, if they're unhappy with where they are, but they like the company, let's say, or they like the essence of what they should be doing? It's just that maybe that it's got caught up in all this other stuff that they don't like. Would your recommendation, again, would you recommend somebody maybe trying to address it, or say, it's very hard to do that, you'd probably be better off looking for something else where you can create a position that is more in line with what you want?
So Vivian, I think that's an individual decision. And so I don't know that there's a line answer to give on that one, because your threshold and tolerance is different than my threshold and tolerance. And so what you may be willing to stick out and say, I'm going to dig in, I'm going to see, I'm going to try to talk to people, I may be like, no, I'm done. So I think that that's really independent of the person. I think it's independent of a lot of other factors where they are in their life. I think that someone who is just starting the job may not have as much loyalty or as much willingness to dig in, if you will, if they've only been there for, I think it depends on the age that you are and how you view your career. You're at the beginning of your career, the middle of your career, towards the downswing, the end of your career. Yeah. So I think that's not necessarily a blanket answer.
Right, of course
not. On the person. And I think it depends on what it is you want. If you want that job bad enough and you believe that it can be different, then be the change at the job and do all that you can. There are definitely colleagues that I have who there's a whole movement called Pizza is Not Working, with one of my colleagues who is really going to bat for those professionals in the retail setting to try to change that establishment, or change the way that professionals are working in those environments. But then there are other people who say, you know what, I don't have that energy, and I'm going to go and create something different. I think that is totally dependent on who the person is.
Okay. Great answer. Because I was also thinking, like, how do you talk to management and what do you say? But that's obviously a whole nother conversation. I think you could kind of synopsize it. If it's something that's important to you, you figure out how to talk to management, and maybe try to recreate things. And I guess my thought would be is if the answer is if they're not willing to do that, that's when I guess you got to take your cue to leave. But like you said, that's of course an individual decision.
Right, right.
All right. Thank you very much. Any parting words? We didn't get any questions, so.
Well, oftentimes things are seen as replay, or things. It is probably the middle of a lot of people's working day. So I would just say. I would just say a phrase that I say very, very often, which is your dreams are urgent. And so I don't think anyone has a dream to be burnt out. I don't think anyone has a dream to be disgruntled or unhappy with their job. So no matter what it is you're doing, remember that your dreams are urgent. And if your dream is to be there at that particular place, then go and do all that you can to make it the type of place that you would want to work. If that's not your dream, then go and build your dream, whatever that may be.
Those are wonderful parting words. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to, I know what I was going to say. So for anybody who doesn't know, and hopefully there's no one, the conference we're talking about is the RX Influencer Salon, coming up October 24th and 25th in St. Louis. And it's the first time that we've been able to have a live event. We're very excited. And it's the first time we can implement the Pharma Salon ideology, which is no PowerPoints. It's all discussion based. And that's why we talked a little bit about community, because the idea is that everybody will be talking via roundtable, just talking with those panels and fireside chats. So if anybody has any questions about it, go to pharmasalon.com. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll talk again soon.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.